What's happening, guys? Today we're going to be going over shipping. So we're going over the basics with shipping, but also how you want to be estimating what you're going to pay per unit when you're shipping whatever product you're busy looking at. And lastly, we're going to look into how you can potentially halve the shipping cost of your products. This is about getting your products from point A to point B. And when it comes to shipping, there are a couple participants in the supply chain. Number one, the exporter, and your supplier of your product is the exporter of the product. So if you have a supplier on Alibaba, they are actually the exporter in this equation. The importer, you as the seller, are actually the importer here. Then you have shipping lines, and these are the big shipping companies. They actually ship your product from the load port to the destination port, for example, from a port in China to a port in the US or in the UK or in Germany, etc. And then freight forwarders, probably the most common participant or the most mentioned phrase out of the lot, and they are the ones who organize everything. They basically bring all these components together and make it happen. So they're involved in organizing the warehousing and shipping of your products from point A to point B, organizing everything, documentation, payments, etc. And next, freight forwarders versus shipping lines. This is a clear distinction. A freight forwarder offers a turnkey service to export and import through cooperation with shipping lines. They don't actually own those cargo vehicles, whereas a shipping line owns and operates the vessels which actually physically transport your goods, and they do that from the load port to that final destination port. So that's the big difference here, and this is where most of the confusion happens when it comes to the basics of shipping. So the freight forwarder seems to handle a lot, but what exactly do they handle? Well, the freight forwarder has a lot of peripheral tasks, things you and I as the seller would never think about. These are things like insuring the goods to protect against unforeseen circumstances, customs documentation for the leaving of one country and the entering of another country, bills of lading. This is something issued by the cargo carrier for the receipt of the goods. They're acknowledging we have your goods on board. And then freight consolidation as well as payments. And really consolidation comes down to your shipment being packed into a container with other sellers' shipments. So it's efficient packing to reduce cost, but also payments, which often is going to involve different international transfers to different parties. So in short, your freight forwarder is that turnkey piece of the puzzle. They handle all of this for you. So the next question is, should I set up with a freight forwarder? Well, here you have three options. Number one is you could set up with a specific freight forwarder. You actually set up a proper account with them, that one forwarder, and then that one freight forwarder handles all your shipments going forward in the future. You just contact them, put them in touch with the supplier if you haven't already made that connection with them, and then they handle all your shipments for you. You have one freight forwarder. Option two is you use a freight website of some sort. I personally like to use freightos.com, which I'm going to show you in a moment. But here you're gaining multiple quotes from multiple freight forwarders from one website, and you're doing that for each individual shipment. So as the shipment's ready to go, you're getting this whole string of quotes and then choosing how to ship that shipment. So a bit different to number one, but I will show you more on Freightos in a moment. And option number three, probably the best for newbie sellers, is you can also use your supplier's partnered freight forwarder. Remember, suppliers are companies in their own right. They're also probably importing, exporting goods, and so they have partnered freight forwarders locally. And so what you can do is set up with your supplier to also do the shipping in a lot of cases. There can also be a negotiation tactic where you say we'll also do the shipping with you, and then you negotiate them down on the full amount per unit, manufacturing and shipping together, because you're doing a bigger amount with them. So that's something you can do if you just want the easiest possible solution and you don't want to do one of the other two here. So if you do want to choose number 1 here, then it would be useful to know a couple of freight forwarders. And here you can see some really well established freight forwarders. These are like some of the biggest freight forwarders in the world, is DSV or CH Robinson. So you can check them out if you're going with option 1. You can also go with Amazon specific freight forwarders. So they specialize in Amazon shipments. You don't have to use these, but they are here. That would be Priority Freight and Co-Shipper. Something else I also wanted to note at this point is just mode of transport and how you can ship goods. And if you're shipping to the US, as you probably know, you can use air or sea predominantly, especially from China where most of you'll be sourcing. But if you're shipping to Europe, then you can use air and sea, but you can also use rail. And this is a way I like to ship a lot of shipments to the UK and to Europe, is using rail. It's an intermediate approach between air and sea, both in terms of cost and time. So if you are shipping to Europe, that's just something to note. It is an extra transport mode for you. But what are the major differences in cost between these modes? Well, you can see our example product here, 500 units, 1.5 pound product at those dimensions, pretty standard, maybe something similar to what you're doing. And you can see China to North America, here are the costs involved when we use different modes. With air, it's going to be $4.79 per unit, or for that whole shipment, $2,397. Whereas if we do sea, it's going to be $1.86 per unit, or $932 overall. So in this you can see why I promote sea or ocean shipping so heavily. You're saving so much money per unit. You can see just from this example, there's a $3 difference per unit. When you start thinking about Amazon profit margins, that's huge. $3 for every single sale. So I would rather wait that extra bit of time for that massive boost in profit margin. So I want to move away from the presentation for one moment, and you can see on screen here Freightos.com, spelled just like this, Freightos. And here you can actually choose to click to ship to Amazon FBA. And you can see there's a couple things we're going to need in order to use this quote generator. But once we do, we can have multiple quotes for the shipment we're wanting to send to Amazon FBA. So we're going to do a normal shipment here where we're sending in boxes. We're sending in multiple big cartons that hold our individual units. Then we need to choose the number of units we're actually shipping. That again is the number of cartons or boxes as they call it here, and then the dimensions of those cartons, and then the weight of those cartons. So where can you find that information? Well, you have two options. Option number one, and the simplest, is simply to contact your supplier and ask them for exactly this. How many cartons are they sending? What are the sizes of those cartons? What's the weight of those cartons? And as a bonus, I would also ask them how many units are in each carton. Option two, and this is like a preliminary quote, so you're busy with your research, you don't want to contact the manufacturer yet, but you just want to have a good guesstimate of what it's going to cost you to ship those units. What you can do is go over to Alibaba.com where you're sourcing from, and you need to find a unit that matches what you're sending to Amazon and has certain information beneath packaging and delivery. Now the item you're specifically looking at, say it was this one, might not have that information exactly how you need it. As you can see, it's not here. So you're looking to find a similar item, similar weight and size that does have this information here. The size of those cartons, the weight of those cartons, and also how many cartons you're going to be sending. And say we're going to send 500 units in this example. Well, here we can see they can either send it by 10 sets per carton or 60 sets per carton. And what we're going to do is 10 sets per carton, because this 60 set carton is going to be way too big for Amazon FBA. They do not accept cartons above a certain size and weight. So we're going to do the 10 sets per carton, and knowing our product, which measures about 34 by 24 as a square almost, we know that this is going to be the size of that 10 set carton, because it's going to be about 3 centimeters thick, and you can see here 34 centimeters high. So that is 10 in one carton. So we know that, and we know the size of the cartons, and we know the weight of 1 unit, so we can estimate out 10 units plus a little bit for the weight of the carton. Now in this example, I'm going off very little information, but you guys should be able to find supplier listings here that actually list everything I'm going through right now: the weight, the size, and how many units per carton, as well as the number of cartons, which you're obviously going to have to work out based on the number of units you are purchasing. So now that we have that information, we can jump back onto Freightos and we're going to input this. So the number of units, so how many boxes would we be sending? Well, it's 10 in each box, and we're sending 500. So we're going to be sending 50 cartons. Then the length, width, and height, I'm going to leave this in centimeters. And as we saw there, it was 34 by 24 by 34. And then the unit weight. So what's the weight of these cartons? Well, we know that 1 unit weighs 1 kilogram. There's 10 in there, so that's 10 kilograms per unit. And once you've input this for your product, after either asking your supplier or estimating through the procedure we went through, you're going to click on next step. Amazon FBA packing requirements. So who's labeling your boxes? If you're having your supplier do this, which I recommend, click on My Supplier Me. Who is placing your boxes on pallets? This should be your supplier. At the very least, they'll be doing an EXW quote, an X works, which means they make the goods ready at their factory for shipment. So it should definitely be My Supplier Me. Origin location, here it is going to be in China, and we're going to put in this province here, and we're going to have a ship ready date at the beginning of September. We're going to be shipping to an Amazon warehouse, and here we're actually going to select the Texas FTW warehouse, this one right over here, a very good international shipping address if you want an estimate. We click on next and then purchase a customs bond. So you can see here, you can choose yes or no, I already have one. And what a customs bond really is an assurance that any fees or duties involved in importing that good will be paid over to customs. And you can do this in 2 ways: single or continuous. Single is where you choose to set up a customs bond per shipment that you do. This is less common, especially for frequent importers, exporters like us. A continuous customs bond is something you set up for 12 months, and it then gives assurance to all shipments within that 12 months for the same purposes. So here, if you already have a customs bond, for example, you've already set up with a specific forwarder like option 1, then you won't need to do this here. Another area you won't have to do it is if you're using your supplier to also ship the goods and they're doing a DDP shipment, delivered duty paid, then a customs bond will be worked into that cost as well. But in the case that you are doing your own individual shipments, you're going to need to make a decision on how you want to play the customs bond. If you say yes, you can see here, you could do it for a single shipment, this one shipment, and this is valued at $5,000. Our current shipment of 500 units, $10 a unit, and we would pay $50 for this customs bond. Or you can do continuous, which could be up to $500 here, but again, it's for 12 months. In this case, I'm going to say no, I already have one. And then insurance down here, yes, definitely we'll add insurance just so that we have an accurate quote. And that was $5,000 value. Then search and book. You can see it's finding results for us. And so it's loaded here, and you can see the first option is actually C.H. Robinson, and it would be an $809 quote. So actually quite cheap per unit. This is sea shipping, and you can see here about a 40-day lead time on this. Then you can see the other options here getting very expensive with air shipping. You can see here. So I would not recommend that. You can see that's really expensive per unit. This is actually $10 per unit if we're sending 500, whereas this shipment up here is going to be $1.60 per unit. So you're saving a huge amount. Your profit margin's just going to go way up. So at this point, if you're actually using Freightos to book a quote, you can select it and actually book this quote. You can also call Freightos or chat with them here. They are very, very helpful. If you're a bit worried about something, or you want to see if you can find a better deal, or if another date would be better. And on the other hand, if you were just getting an estimate, now you have a more real world estimate of what it's really going to cost you per unit and in total to ship that good. And that's going to be very important for calculating profit. And lastly on the slide here, I want to talk about cost optimization. And you can see at the top here, we have a less than container load shipment. And this basically means your products are placed into containers. Pretend this is a big container, and they're placed in there, but they don't fill the whole container. Other sellers' shipments will also be in here with yours. And that creates two bottlenecks. Number one is on consolidation, where they have to pack everything into that container. That takes time and can add to the expense for all parties whose shipments are in that container. When it arrives at the destination port, bulk breaking has to occur, where they break down those shipments from this big container into their individual shipments, again creating those two issues. On the other hand, down here, you can see a full container load. And this is when your products fill that entire container without anyone's shipment in there. It doesn't even have to fill the whole container. You might use 80% but buy a full container. The key is that no one else's shipment is in that container. And the reason we're talking about this with cost optimization is when you move from this to this, you are literally going to half, if not more, your shipping cost per unit. It also means there's no consolidation, there's no bulk breaking, so your shipments are faster. Also, there's less potential for damage to your units, because every time they have to go in and out of that container with other shipments, that causes potential for damage to your products. So that's another factor to consider. It's going to be cheaper, faster, and with less risk. So then how do you work out when you could actually fill an entire container? Because obviously that's quite a lot of units. Well, again, of course you could ask your supplier, at what level of units do I fill a container? But you can see here, and I just want you to know this, you can see that 16,000 sets, 16,000 units is 20 GP. This means a 20-foot container. Over here, this is meant to be 32,000 sets, is a 40-foot container. And 38,840 sets is an extra height 40-foot container. So that's what that means. And this is a way you can work out, okay, I need to order 16,000 units, and only at that point will I be filling a container. Remember, you could also do 12,000 units, still buy the full container, because it's still going to be cheaper than going less than container load. At the point where you're filling a less than container load container, up to about 60%, you may as well be purchasing a full container. So this is how you can really start to optimize your shipping costs in the future. If this did help you, please smash that like button for me. Remember to subscribe below. I know this was a shorter session, guys, but there were a lot of questions coming in on shipping and what your options are here. As always, I hope you guys are making some good progress, and I will see you in the next video.